I guess the homily into 3 sections today. The first one, sort of a little bit of a, I guess you'd say, a history lesson in some way. And that has to do with the amount of wine that Jesus made. And in the book of Baruch in the Old Testament, there's a lot of imagery about the wine. And let me read this to you. The earth shall yield its fruit 10,000 times. And on each grapevine there shall be 1,000 branches. And each branch shall produce 1,000 clusters. And each cluster will produce 1,000 grapes. And each grape will produce a core of wine. A core is measured in 120 gallons. But the same amount of wine that Jesus made in Galilee. So this great abundance is symbolic of the coming of the Messianic age, right? Jesus draws on that symbolism, and it wouldn't have been lost on the people at the time either. When we think of this gospel, we've all heard this often, the wedding at Cana and the gospel story. And so, you know, as a homilist, you're faced with trying to find some aspect to it to entice the people so they don't fall asleep. And so it becomes quite challenging. But you know what? One of the great graces I think I've received since I've been ordained is when I read Scripture now, I seem to find a great deal more depth than I ever found before. And I feel very blessed at that. And I think that when you look at this gospel in terms of today's world, it's kind of interesting. You know, the world around us, there's pollutants in the air and toxins in the air. And our land, you know, is degenerating, right? The drive back and from church here, we see construction and farmland going, disappearing, nature disappearing, wild animals having to search for new homes and so on. It doesn't have to be that way because, you see, at the time of the wedding at Cana, the Jewish people felt that way as well. Their way of life, they felt, was disappearing. The Romans had conquered the land. There were new laws present. Their king had essentially abandoned them for materialism. Couldn't care less about their well-being, exploited them. So they felt much about the loss of land, etc., as some of us do today when we look at newscasts. But Jesus, in turning the water into wine, this miracle is very deep. He is taking something that's old and feeling lost and wasted and making it fresh and new. This water, the water they put into the jugs is the water they would use for cleansing. Okay, so when you came in, there's dust and dirt, and you washed your hands, your feet, and so on. So the quality of water didn't have to be that good. It wasn't meant for drinking. So Jesus takes the lowest quality of water around and changes it into this wine. And it's symbolic of a new life, a new beginning. And one of the other things I think that people sometimes struggle with is this phrase that Jesus used, well, Mother, my time has not yet come. And I think too often we get stuck in that saying, wow, you know, Jesus, a little harsh with his mother there, isn't he? Well, again, it's highly symbolic. In the Gospel of John, that happens twice when he refers to Mary as mother. This at Cana, and when he's on the cross. And in both cases, it's symbolic of a new life, a new world coming to us, taking place. And I think it's a great inspiration. When we look around us, when we want to find faith, we want to find something to spur us on, to keep going. A gospel like this does that. It's the first public miracle that Jesus performs. and it's filled with so much symbolism. And perhaps a little bit on the humorous side, I guess that's the third part of this, is that we look at, well, one thing I read, a deeply evangelical person was quite upset at this gospel. Why is Jesus making wine? Because wine leads to intoxication, right? And that's not good. This gospel shouldn't even be read. But if you're just focusing on the wine part of it, you miss the whole point, right? And sometimes gospels are like emails. You ever try to send out a sarcastic email? It's really hard to do that because the person reads the words and you don't have the tone of the sarcasm. You know, yes, dear. Type in yes, dear. It doesn't mean anything, right? And so if you think of this gospel, history is like this. If you think of the wedding itself, okay, and they run out of wine and Mary comes over, yes, mother, kind of thing, right? And he doesn't say, you know, so well, my time really hasn't, you know, it's not time to start this yet. And she's, yeah, you know, she knows what he can do. So she turns out, do what he tells you. So Jesus says, fill these up with water. So they do. Now, picture yourself at the wedding, right? You know, there's a whole group there. We're all there, right? And some of us may know they run out of wine, some of us may not. But we can recognize those jars because that's where you get the water from to, you know, rinse off your feet and so on, and the dust from your hands and your face, right? So this guy says, fill those up with water and draw some of it and bring it over to the wine steward. Now, how would you like to be the servant that was directed to do that? Go to the jar with a goblet. Sorry, Michelle. Go take the goblet, get some, dip it in and bring it to the wine steward. Now, do you think that there was a little dispute among the servants as to who was going to do this? You take it. I'm not taking it. Are you crazy? Who does that guy think he is? What is he, the Messiah or something? Well, I don't want to get kicked by the wine steward. You do it. No, you do. So they finally find, I guess, some rookie. Hey, you with the red hair, come here. Right? Take this to the wine steward. Brings it over to the wine steward, probably trembling, right? Wine steward sips it. Wow, this is great stuff. And the other guy's like, oh, what do you think of that? Right? So the little interaction of how this would be presented is kind of lost in the gospel. And if you do stop and think, was Jesus sitting and saying, come on, let's get the wine served. You know, it's been a few minutes now since I made it. It's sitting there. And what happens is somebody really liked the wine, which we're told in the gospel they did. Like the wine steward said, hey, where did you get this? What are you going to say? You point out, that guy over there made it. Oh, well, where's the vineyard? There's no vineyard. Okay, come on now, where did you get the wine? Quit putting me on here, right? Go to a restaurant, you have a good bottle of wine, you say, wow, what's that? You know, what's the name of that? I want to write it down so I can go and get it. Couldn't do that. So it must have been kind of baffling to some of the people around to say, wow, this is great wine. Where does it come from? Well, that guy brought it. Did they go and say to Jesus, hey, where did you get this wine? It's really good. Well, I wonder what Jesus would have said to them. Go ask my mother. So when we look at a story like this, for us it's a whole new beginning in many respects. Just the simple fact of the miracle of this wine is a new beginning for the people. And I've been doing a lot of reading about new beginnings and new churches and so on. And there's a great movement afoot. And you know what? It reminds me so much of today, of back then, when the Jews were looking for something new. They weren't happy with how worship worked. You know, it's very hierarchical, and you could only sit here if you were special, and if you were poor or whatever, you're at the back, or don't come in at all, etc., etc., etc. They were looking for something special. The word, the meaning, Scripture had lost its meaning for them. So there they were. And so in comes Jesus, the Messiah, who's bringing the fulfillment of Scriptures, bringing something new. And if we look around in the world today, that something new is catching on. Look at all the books that are out there describing church and belief as we do here, as we practice here in our congregation. There are thousands just like us out there who have said, you know what? The same thing day in and day out for the last 2,000 years isn't working. We want something new. We want to be faithful disciples, not robots. And that's the message of Jesus. It's never lost. It never grows old. That's the beauty of it. And when you read these in Scripture, the miracles and Jesus' travels and so on, it's exciting stuff. It really is. What a great story it is. And so this story of the wine at Cana, if you read it in that context, it's neat. It really is. And we even see a human side of Jesus saying to his mother, well, my time hasn't really come. But she's saying, it's like a parent telling a kid it's time you left home now, sweetheart. Right? It's time you began your ministry, Jesus. And so it does, so it happens. And we benefit from all of that. Because we, in our community at Christ the Servant, we are part of this, the way, which it was called in the early days of Christianity. We're part of that. And I think it's great to be able to live as part of that, part of the way.